I'm dead, or at least I'm too old. Well, am I dead or am I old? I suppose I'm getting older minute by minute. But what I'm looking at right now in this particular video is the things people waste their youth on and regret later in life. So if I'm dead, will I regret things? Perhaps not. But if I'm old, I'm definitely looking back and maybe I might have regrets. So let's look at the notion of regrets, the possibility of regrets. And how we're going to do it is we're going to look at it from the point of birth through youth and then as far as old age. So we're going to start at down here, youth, up here. We're going to look at it through 4 studies as well. So I'm going to look at the first study, which is essentially what parents regret about having children, communicating regrets online. The second study I'm going to look at is a cancer in the minds of youth. Then study 3 then is going to be keep the faith, spirituality as a contributor to resiliency in 5 elderly people. But all of these elderly people they're old and they have regrets. The 4th study I'm looking at then is when reminiscing is harmful. And we're looking at all of these different older people spread across Czech Republic, Cameroon, and actually Germany. So we're looking at 2 continents there, Africa and Europe. So it's going to be interesting. So let's get stuck in. When we look at the first particular study, we look at what do parents find regretful, or what do parents regret about having children. Whoa, imagine regretting having children for a second. Imagine actually having children, you might ask or wonder to yourself. But the reality is this particular study was looking at, Reddit users' online feedback with regard to, having children. And they looked at a certain amount of things that were regrets, big regrets and small regrets. One was the partner, the particular partner that they chose or even had children with. Now, if we think about that for a second, do you have a choice in the partner that you perhaps marry? Yeah, you could say. But then again, do you have the choice on the person you have a baby with? Perhaps not always. So these parents have looked at it and found that their partner has been, a regret insofar as having a child with that person. Then they looked at the timing. Now the timing has not actually been ideal for them when they look back on things. Now it might have been ideal at the time, but it hasn't been the perfect thing for them in their lives with regard to maybe perhaps the projected timing, what happened in the future, maybe when the child was 5 years old or 10 years old, or even the fact that they had to have children when they were later on in life. So this was a big regret. Then it's the number of children. The number of children can be huge in a household. Years ago we had children that were, there was much more children in households traditionally in many kind of westernized countries. And now we have, of course, a lower amount of children per household, 1, 2 or 3, whereas before we might have 5 or 6 and plus to that. So the number of children, now you can imagine if there's only 1 or 2 as opposed to 5 or 6, the number might be just, 1 more. And if you're that unlucky child to be that 1 more, then are you going to have, as a parent, a good relationship with that child? Are you going to be happy with them? Are you going to be actually regretful of having that 1 more child? Ooh, it sounds a bit dodgy. Sacrifice is another thing they found in this study. Sacrifice to be a parent, to continue to obviously be with a partner and parent that 1 more child or the other children. So there's all these regrets. Then there's difficult children and, self-analysis of how you are as a parent. They've looked at this. And this was the feedback of the Reddit users as such. The next study was looking at a cancer within the minds of youth. And now we're kind of going up a scale. We started at being a parent and birth. Now we're up into teenagehood. young adults. And this is where people have looked at the fact that their own analysis of their own lives and their own wasting of time. And within this study, they looked at young people, university undergraduates, 18, 19, 20, that kind of age group in an English university. And within that university, they looked at 265 undergraduates. And the undergraduates looked at their own behaviour and how they were spending time and what they were spending time on. And what they found out was the biggest cancer wasn't actually, cancer itself. More so, it was what you have in your hand most of the time. It was the smartphone, the iPhone and such. And they looked into their own specific personal behaviour. And what they honestly said and fed back was that they had uncontrollable, frequent use of looking at their own messages, searching for messages that don't actually exist. If you think about that logically, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever that you would continuously look at your phone to check for messages when you know consciously that your phone rings or beeps or vibrates in some regard that's loud enough. In fact, you perhaps made the setting on the phone, so you actually decided to make it loud enough. You decided to change the tone. You perhaps decided to have that ring because it's your favourite song and so on. So why would you constantly look at it? Yet it's happening. Then of the 265 people, those smart university students, undergraduates that is, in England, they noticed that they were basically looking at their phones for no reason, particularly, late at night. And again, it doesn't make sense, really, because if you have messaged somebody late at night and you want a response back, fair enough, you're going to get the response back, perhaps late at night or early in the morning. But if you have chosen to have an early night and you plan to have an early night, why not leave your phone outside your room consciously? Why not not message somebody, so therefore you're not going to expect a message back? Or if it's a thing where you're using your, imagine, phone as a computer, you're using it late at night. But again, if you want to sleep, you're choosing to do it and you're just completely contradicting your own plans or thoughts for the night and perhaps the next morning. So this was what was happening, what's actually happening with intelligent people. The third thing they said was irrelevant use, and I suppose that brings the two things together, that there is no point in using the phone if you consciously know that you don't want to use the phone, but subconsciously you're using the phone, you're looking at the phone. This is a little bit crazy. Yep. Anyway, this is what's happening. This is what youth are spending their time on according to this particular study. So bear that in mind. We're progressing now. Third study, keep the faith, or keeping the faith as such, and spirituality as a contributor to resilience in 5 elderly people. Now, I know it's only 5 people. How can this particular study have such depth into it? Well, the interesting thing here is that we're looking at it from the older person's point of view, and age has a lot to do with it. These people, these 5 people, were 80 years plus. Now, they were also part of this Hear My Voice study. And the Hear My Voice study, well, it kind of is self-explanatory as such. It's, basically that people are being heard. They have a voice, and because they're elderly, often people wonder, maybe they shouldn't be heard. But just because they're over 80, they have very acute awareness, these particular 5 people. And what they said was that spirituality allows them to have a strength. And not only that, it builds up resilience. Now, okay, perhaps you're not spiritual, perhaps you're not religious, perhaps you don't even see a link between spirituality and religion. And that's fine too. Maybe you see that spirituality is a wonderful thing, but religion is not, or whatever. I'm not talking about that, and neither are these older people. What they're saying though is that for them is a link between spirituality on one hand and resilience more so on the other. That this spirituality, or belief in this spirituality, or this kind of confidence in spirituality, or this particular significance of spirituality in their lives relates to resilience, gives them that resilience. And for them, it also gives them this strength and sense of community, and this sense also of inspiration. Now that's a really big sense to have when you're over 80 and perhaps you're not able to walk or move or get about or even have the people around you from your youth. To have that sense of inspiration. Imagine being or feeling or waking up inspired as an older person. That's pretty inspirational in itself, to think that that could happen to you or could happen to me. That's actually a good thing to look forward to as you age, and hopefully gracefully. The fourth study then looked at when reminiscing is actually harmful. And we touched on the likes of depressions and people looking at themselves in a certain way. Now, they looked at two different continents here. They looked at Europe, where you had Czech Republic, and Germany. They also looked at Africa and Cameroon. So there's a comparative there between a very poor continent on one hand, you have Africa, represented by Cameroon, and then of course Europe, represented by the Czech Republic and Germany. Now, in this particular study, they had 637 elderly people who gave their feedback. And their kind of feedback was more towards self-negative reminiscence. So when they were looking back on things, they were reminiscing in a very negative fashion. That's not entirely good. And it's very important to bear that in mind. And the fact that there was hundreds of people reminiscing in this regard, well, it's not good at all, is it? But it's a very good, I suppose, pointer towards how you might feel as an older person, how you might actually want to stop regretting or even looking back on things in case you will regret things. So there's ups and downs to these studies, these four studies. So what can we conclude then from it? What can we learn from it if we're young enough to know that we're not yet elderly, and we've looked at parents and regrets of parents, and we've looked at the fact that people in youth can admit that they're wasting time on, be it social media or the use of technology or their phone, then perhaps they can begin to stop and say, I don't want to be a regretful older person. How can I spend my time better? Well, we can learn from these things by, first of all, picking the correct partner, choosing the correct partner. Take the great singer, the great song, Father and Son, and he sang it. And he sang it with emotion towards taking your time and thinking a lot. And maybe if we take our time, and if everybody took their time and thought a lot about it, and got the partner that was most communicative, most agreeable to them, and I know this is all idyllic, but if we have that, then we're going to have children that we won't regret having, or the timing of having children, and we won't regret the timing because it'll be an agreed thing between two people. So the two people would probably end up being communal or good parents together. They're probably going to have maybe more than one child, and the children are going to be happier in that kind of unit, that family unit and such. So I know, again, this is idyllic, but again, we can learn from this. If we're younger, we can look forward to having that family with that person, to be able to grow together and as a unit, as a family unit as such. Then we look at technology. The big thing there about technology was our smartphone usage. So how can people then stop using their phone and wasting time, wasting your own time? Well, just stop. Put the phone out of the bedroom. Leave it there in a different room. Plan the time of your messages. And I know we're talking about planning a lot, and it spoils the mood, spoils the fun. I just want to shoot a message off to somebody. That's fair enough. But we have to realise that once we shoot a message to somebody, we're going to get a response at a certain time as well. So thinking ahead in some regard, not like totally ruining the fun and the buzz, but just realising that one message leads to another message, and then it multiplies and replicates. As does looking online. We could be hours at it. We know that it's massive, bigger than the world itself, way more websites than countries. So we need to look at that and learn from the mistakes of other people. And finally, we look at, well, basically looking back without any regrets. These are the things we can do, and without any kind of self-analysis of what we could have been, or depressive episodes towards, I should have done that. So if we stop right now and think about where we want to go in the future, I'm not saying you'll get there right away, but once you make that plan, or have that plan in mind, and go towards it, then when we get to that point in the future, we're not going to have as many regrets. That's the theory. But also, that's what we've been told by the older, wiser people. So, it's up to ourselves. See how we go. The future is now. Until next time, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you very much. Well, what's left now is, I hope I don't regret making this video. We'll know in the future. So have a wonderful day.